For Cam Coleman to live up to his potential and expectations, he's got to hit the ground running year one.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Happy Monday. We're joined by Lindsay Crosby, writer at auburndaily.com, as well as a million other places. We'll talk about Auburn baseball sweep over the weekend towards the end of the show. But, Lindsay, the amount of excitement and amount of hype around Auburn's wide receivers that are coming in from the high school ranks, specifically Cam Coleman leading the charge. Yes, I know Bryce Cain is generating a lot of conversation, as he should. He's deserving of it. And the anticipation is high for Perry Thompson to join his team when summer semester starts. But as far as right now, and as far as Auburn taking that step as an offense this spring, Cam Coleman needs to hit the ground running and be the guy. Because you and I were talking before we clicked record. Can Cam Coleman lead Auburn, be Auburn's leading receiving yardage earner of all time when it's all said and done and when he moves on from Auburn to the NFL? And I think he can, but in order to do that, he has to be pretty prolific to give himself a shot to close the gap later in his career at Auburn. And sadly, Lindsay, that number is lower than it should be. Terry Beasley holds the all-time receiving career yardage record at Auburn with 2,507 yards. That just seems so low. Seems so low.
It feels like Calvin Johnson had that year by himself one season. NFL, but still, like
probably pretty close. I mean, it's just insane. And so if you're to take that, you say, okay, can Cam Coleman break 2,507 yards during his time at Auburn? What does he need to do in his first year? So if you divide that by 3, you're at 835.67 yards a season. Can he do that year one? I'm not sold that he can.
It's obviously the big story of the offseason, I think, is what is he going to do? I also kind of agree with you on this, and I struggle to see where the production's going to come from in this specific offense. Now, we have time, obviously, between now and fall to get a better idea of, which quarterback's going to be the guy who can they reliably get him the ball enough to do that?
Sure.
It just feels like that's probably not going to happen in year one, but also I don't necessarily know if he has to hit that in year one to eventually be the record holder and have 2,508 yards or more by the end of his college career.
Yeah. Auburn folks, we don't really have a whole lot to compare this to. I mean, we've brought in really talented, really large outside receivers, but we've never really brought in a guy like Cam Coleman before. You can say the same about Perry Thompson as well, but just Cam Coleman's the subject of today's show. And I don't really know how to describe what we should or should not expect from him. So the closest thing that we've got to kind of look at historical data and historical examples is what Hugh Freeze did at Ole Miss when he was the head coach there. And we'll start with A.J. Brown because I think physically Cam Coleman looks a lot like A.J. Brown. Yeah. And I mean that in the most complimentary way possible.
He's like 6'3", 190. He's not that incredibly massive weight-wise guy like a Julio Jones or someone like that.
Yeah, but he plays so physical, right? Which is exactly what you want, but also has the ability to make you miss and has top-line speed and all of that too. So, I mean, there's a lot to like about that. But you look at what these guys have done at their freshman years, and we'll talk about Laquan Treadwell. We can talk about DK Metcalf as well. But A.J. Brown, he only played for Freeze in 2016. He was at Ole Miss, I believe, for 2016, 17, and 18. But his freshman year, he went for 412 yards. After that is when he took a big step forward and went for over 1,200, then over 1,300, those following 2 seasons. And that's kind of what I'm expecting. I think Cam Coleman needs to get more than 400. I think he needs to be the 500, 600, 700 range, and we'll see what happens. We'll talk about other obstacles and if that's good or bad for Auburn in the next segment, Lindsay. But that's kind of what I'm expecting. I think Cam Coleman still has a solid chance to lead Auburn in receiving. The more I look at this, the more I do think Rivaldo Fairweather will lead Auburn in receiving again. We've got plenty of time to make and change our opinions on that. But if Cam Coleman lives in that 500 or 600 range, I do think he'll be in striking distance to break Auburn's all-time receiving yardage record, because I think he'll have that massive jump from his freshman year to his sophomore year, and then again for his junior year.
And kind of giving more credence to that theory, going back and looking at Dante Moncrief at Ole Miss, and his freshman year, 2011, Hugh Freeze was not there, but 12 and 13, Hugh Freeze was. He has 454 yards his freshman year, 31 catches. His sophomore year, when Hugh Freeze comes in, all of that doubles. 66 catches, 979 yards, goes from 4 touchdowns to 10 touchdowns. And it wasn't necessarily an efficiency thing. He went from 14.6 yards per catch to 14.8. It was just more of a focus on getting him the ball. So, like I could absolutely see how he could significantly increase. I mean, A.J. Brown exploded his sophomore year, and the question here is going to be, can he get enough yards in his freshman year where if he takes that year 2 leap that a lot of guys just naturally take, will he then be on pace to have a great junior year and do it before he goes to the league? That's kind of the question here.
Yeah, and we saw a similar thing with Laquan Treadwell. In 2013, his freshman year, 608 yards. In 2014, 632 yards. Obviously got hurt in that game against Auburn that season, so that was not a full season, but had more yards in 4 less games. And then 2015, Ole Miss, coming off of an injury, he had over 1,100 yards. Then ultimately was a first-round draft pick by the Vikings, I believe. So
Vikings, yeah.
So I mean, we saw that jump with Laquan Treadwell as well. So once again, like I just think we need to have proper expectations for Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson. I think we could lump Perry Thompson into this conversation as well, as far as, okay, can these guys live around that 400, 500, 600 yards in their first season? And if they do that, I think we can expect 1,000-yard year from either of them the following year.
The one thing I do want to point out is Laquan Treadwell beat the yards in his sophomore year. Significantly fewer catches. He got way more efficient with his actual production. He had like 8 and change yards per catch in 2013, his freshman year, like 8.4, and he jumped to 13.2 in his sophomore year. Like A.J. Brown was always getting big numbers, 14.2 to 16.7, but Laquan Treadwell took a significant leap in efficiency, how many yards he was getting per play versus his freshman year, when it kind of, you could think, okay, he got the numbers because he was kind of being forced the ball. Right. And then when he was able to naturally get open and run after the catch. That's when he put up he was on track to put up stupid numbers before the injury. So I do think that, like, it makes sense. I really have questions about how that freshman year is going to go. And I think there's questions from other guys in the program taking catches. There's other questions from how they're going to get the ball. Are we going to be throwing enough to do it? This is traditionally a run-heavy school. Yeah. And so, like, I do have some questions on all of those respects about what does he actually get in year 1 versus what are we shooting for, which is 400 to 600.
Yeah, and if he gets something shy of that mark, which is, I guess, 835 yards, if we want to take the record and divide it by 3 again.
Yeah.
If he falls short of that, which I'm thinking he will, is it still okay for Auburn and the offense? We discuss in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Lindsay, can you imagine looking anywhere else for qualified candidates other than LinkedIn jobs?
Would never do that. I could not.
Seems like a waste of time.
That. Yeah.
Seems like a waste of time. I don't know why you would do that. I don't think people do. Successful people don't do that. They go to LinkedIn jobs to find their qualified candidates. It's fast. It's free. They've got all the tools to help find the professionals for your team. And it's not just another job board. Imagine thinking LinkedIn was just another job board.
Would never do that.
I would, yeah, because you're smart. That's why. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Lindsay, if Cam Coleman falls short of, let's say, 700 yards through the air in 2024, could you make the argument that it might be a good thing for Auburn? I think the value of spreading things out. I mean, we've already mentioned Perry Thompson. We mentioned Bryce Cain, the freshman. Let's throw in Robert Lewis, the Georgia State transfer wide receiver that's got more production than anybody else in the room coming in. Like, if you gave me the option just to take, okay, hey, Cam Coleman gets 600 yards, Perry Thompson gets 500 yards, and Bryce Cain gets 300 or 400 yards, like, would you take it? And I would take that in a heartbeat. Because of everything else around him. Rivaldo Fairweather, the running backs, Robert Lewis, and other returning guys. I think there's a lot of upside with the offense if those freshmen can get that sort of production.
Oh yeah, I absolutely take that simply because I think Auburn's record for yards in a season is like 3,277. Shout out Demi and Craig, and it's something where if you have that many guys putting up, 5, 6, 400 yards,
yeah,
it feels like you're on the verge of coming at least in that top 10, which is surprisingly low. Brandon Cox's 2005, 2,324 yards is number 10 in history. Like,
wild.
It feels like if you're hitting all of those guys at those levels, it's a top 10 passing season in Auburn history. And one feels like a little bit of an indictment of past Auburn. Not shooting shots here, but I think the only way in which you can see him come short of those of that pace while being healthy and say it's a good thing is if everybody else is kind of hitting these targets, right? If you're putting up 2,500 yards of passing offense in 2024, you have to argue it's a good thing. You have to argue that, okay, yeah, he's not on pace for the record, but Auburn's on pace to reach a new level of offensive production they haven't really had in a long time, right?
Yeah, and unless there's some major step forward at quarterback, which there has to be, and in fact, if there's not, I think it'll be a different guy back there, but you got to think that the rushing game is still going to be a huge part of this offense. I mean, you had all those guys come back. You've got the same running back room as you did a year ago, and Auburn was the fourth best rushing team as far as yards per game on the ground. And to me, they had 189, which was just two behind Georgia with 191. Then LSU had a Heisman winner out there too. And so they were ahead of you. So
not bad.
Yeah, sure. Can they repeat that? Who knows? But as far as the respect that Auburn garnered via the run game, I think they should have leaned into that more and leaned into that earlier, especially into early downs throughout the entire season. You've got to think that's going to be a part of it. I know Hugh Freeze wants to air it out. I know Hugh Freeze wants to use the outside of the field, but he may not have the personnel to do that quite yet. Or he may have the personnel, they're just all 18 and it's not quite ready, as far as a development standpoint. Like
Hank Brown is older than that. He's 19, right?
Sure. But the guys that he may be throwing to aren't, right? And so that goes back to what we were just talking about with Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson. It's like physically, it's just everything that you want in these guys, but is it going to be ready? Is it going to be ready to cook right out of the oven in 2024? And like, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to. So I think Auburn's still going to have to be a team that runs the football. I mean, they've addressed the offensive line. I think the offensive line may be better this year than it was a year ago. And I think that was low key one of the strengths of the team last season. And obviously the running back room is going to be elite. You've got 4 guys that you really, really trust, 3 that I think you absolutely can trust in the running game. And to me, that's the strength of this team. And so I know that it's fun to focus on the new things coming in, and I'm a victim of this too.
Yeah.
But if Auburn's going to win and overachieve, like they're probably going to have to run the football. And that even includes Peyton Thorne with his legs, because he got better, as a rushing quarterback over the course of the season.
Yeah. And is there a scenario where Auburn significantly increases how much they throw the ball to the tight ends, to the running backs in lieu of maybe outside runs and things like that artificially inflate those numbers?
Possibly.
Like is that an aspect of the offense that we see kind of added in for 2024? Is most of our runs will be inside the tackle, and outside the tackle will replace, an outside zone with a quick pass to a back out of the flat or something. I wonder
or
if
a slot receiver or a Sam Jackson the fifth that's transferred over, something like that. Yeah, I mean that's what a modern offense looks like, and that's kind of what we're so hungry for. Is just can Auburn have an offense that looks like it's supposed to in college football post 2020? Like, can we get to that point? The personnel and the roster, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can see the pieces coming together. It's just they've got to execute it. And I mean, so much of that goes through the quarterback. And it's like, if Peyton Thorne's the guy, can they make all those things click day one? I don't know.
I will say Peyton Thorne's 2023, I don't know if Auburn fans realize this or not. Peyton Thorne 2023, that was the 24th best passing season in Auburn football history. 1,755 yards.
And that's with him splitting a good chunk of it with Robbie.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So we take that for what it's worth.
On the note of that, Hank Brown's bowl game individually was the 67th best passing season of Auburn football history. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
That tells you the lineage of quarterback play that we're dealing with at Auburn University.
It's kind of wild. It's insane.
Yeah. Although imagine what Cam Newton would have done with a second season. His 2010, 2,854 yards. That is 15th all time for career yardage at Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one season. Like he could have easily beat Stan White had he been here for 3 years. Wild to think about. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that would have been great. But
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm looking at targets to running backs last year as we're kind of doing this on the fly here. Jarquez Hunter had 25 targets.
Mm-hmm.
Damari had 12. Batty had 8. Cobb had 8. Is that it? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And I hope that number goes up. It definitely needs to go up with Jarquez and Damari. Like, I don't think there's any question about that. And it'll probably go up with Jeremiah too. I'm fascinated to see how they use Batty because they didn't really seem too alarmed when we went into the portal. So I am kind of curious to see how that plays out, but whatever. So, a little speculation as far as receiving production in the books there. All right, we'll talk a little Auburn baseball. Solid start to the season for Butch Thompson and the Tigers. That's coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sports book. You can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning a $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. That can be anything with college basketball or the NBA, whatever it could be. Basketball's got you covered, or FanDuel's got you covered on the basketball front for sure with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to shoot your shot. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. Lindsay Crosby, our guest. The Auburn Tigers start the season off 3-0 with Butch Thompson's team sweeping Eastern Kentucky. Good for them. The Colonels. And to me, the big question with this was, okay, what do the new guys look like? And what does the pitching rotation look like? Me personally, very pleased with the offensive production. That is going to be a fun lineup to watch all year.
It is.
The pitching rotation, we knew this. We expected this going into it, but it seems like that's going to take some time.
Yeah, there was things to like from all three games. There was also a little bit of hesitation as to, okay, is how much of this is early season jitters and how much of this is these guys are maybe going to struggle a bit more than we expected, right? Chase Alsop gets the opening day start and gives up a couple homers, including back-to-backs in that game. Now, it's a good outing all in all for Chase, right? I mean, he he goes 4 2/3, 3 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, no walks, which was the big takeaway from me from watching him in 2023 was he doesn't walk a single batter, but it's still 81 pitches to get through 4 2/3 innings. And he has improved as a pitcher. I wrote this up at Auburn Daily, kind of here's the things that he got better at as far as tweak the slider and more competitive, better able to land the curveball in the zone. And he just stopped trying to throw 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I think that was something that really kind of helped, was not trying to break a radar gun every time he pitched. But I mean, it was 5 runs in 4 2/3 innings, 3 of those being earned off of homers. Now, Joseph Gonzalez made his return 364 days from his last start, and almost that long before his start before that. Looked very rusty early. Got runners on first and second in the first 2 innings, got double plays to get out of it, and then really kind of settled in. And I think it's a good, not great 1-2 punch at the top of the rotation. I do have hope after game 3 though, because you had Christian Herberholtz going in as the piggyback to transfer Carson Myers, and Carson Myers looked like a dude. The radar gun's not going to blow you away. The TrackMan's not going to blow you away. But 2 hits, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts, no runs in 6 innings on like 75 pitches. Like
I'll take it.
He could have, if this was conference play, he could have gone out there for the 7th and maybe even the 8th. Wow. Herberholtz comes in as the piggyback. 3 innings, 1 hit, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, 1 total run allowed in the entire contest. So they get 3 hits and 2 walks, whereas Auburn, puts up 9 runs. The offense is going to carry this team while the pitching staff figures out their roles. And that's something that we've seen on these Auburn teams in the past, right? Yeah. You have a lot of pieces. You got to figure out who fits best in what spot. And when you figure that out, then you're going to go on a run. But what I do like, I want folks to take away this, is if you watch how Auburn used everybody, with Allsup in game 1, Gonzalez in game 2, and he told me after the game, he could have gone back out. He was at 69 pitches. He could have gone back out and taken more innings. And then Auburn was not afraid to go use some of their studs in the back end of the bullpen to get through that game, knowing that they had 2 guys in Myers and Herberholtz who could take the entire game on Sunday, and they did. Yeah. So you feel good about the top end of your bullpen. You feel good about those 2 starters being able to give you competitive innings and at least get through 4 or 5 innings. The question is going to be the fill-ins in the middle there. If for some reason those guys come out early for any reason, what do you do until you get into that back end, those 3 or 4 guys that you know and love?
Right. And as far as, you hinted towards the offense, and the offense is going to carry this team, I think, at times this season. But, there's not really a weak part of this lineup.
No.
You're going to make pitchers, sweat every single inning that they go out there. There's going to be somebody that's concerning. But, Ike Irish, Chris Stanfield, all these guys living up, Bobby Pierce, McMurray. It's a force, Lindsay.
Can I victory lap real quick?
Please.
Okay. I have been telling people since I think last March, maybe February, Chris Stanfield is going to be a problem for opposing teams, offensively, defensively, everything. And Chris Stanfield this weekend, 4 for 9. He gets Auburn's first home run. His 4 hits equaled a cycle because he had a home run on Friday. He had a single and a triple on Saturday and a double on Sunday. So he's showing the power. He stole a base. Cooper Weiss stole 4, by the way, but Chris Stanfield steals a base. He goes out there and robs folks, on defense. I would not be shocked if at the end of the season, Chris Stanfield's the second most valuable offensive player on this team, or non-pitcher on this team, second most valuable position player on this team, because he can impact the game in just about every single facet, and he's one of the more reliable to higher floor guys Auburn has offensively and defensively and on the base paths. And I think as he goes this season, that's going to be how the offense goes. Because even if he's just getting a single or walking to get on, that makes everything harder for the opposing pitcher because he is a threat to steal second or third or home.
Yeah. Ike Irish's hits combined for a cycle too, didn't they? He got a triple
and a double and a homer. So yes, he was 5 of 13. And so, yes, he also combined for a cycle. Bobby Pierce missed it with only a double. Mason Maynard's got everything but a homer. And so, It was a good offensive weekend for Auburn.
A lot of extra bases out there, which is encouraging.
In almost every respect. The only thing you don't necessarily love is Auburn did strike out 15 times over the 3 games. But even then, I feel like, and not having the notes in front of me, I feel like a lot of those were in game 1. And once they got used to pitchers that they hadn't been facing all fall, they really got better in their approaches in games 2 and 3, and it was less strikeouts, more putting the balls in play. You'd rather take a ball in play for an out than a strikeout. So no real concerns there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Lindsay, how can people check out everything that you've got going on?
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. It's the hub for everything. If it's Auburn baseball, auburndaily.com. If it's minor league baseball, Locked On MLB Prospects, the #1 daily minor league baseball podcast.
Award-winning,
thank you. And if it's major leagues, bravestoday.com. We'll actually be at spring training, and I think 2 weekends from now, we'll be at spring training doing this show live from there while we're checking out the Atlanta Braves.
Yep, that's right. That's right. You can find all my work at auburndaily.com. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.